So how do we collect, gather, report on the data that's most important to us? And that is why anytime you're working with an agency, if they skip that conversation, I would consider that to be a red flag, right? We got to start with building the right foundation, and the foundation in digital marketing is really, like I said, tracking. And then it's what are the metrics that we're tracking towards, or what are the most important KPIs for the business? Not every business has the same ones. Many do, but there are some businesses that have very specific metrics that they care about. So it's really important to make sure that we're tracking those events, those metrics. It may be more than one.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Borja Cuan. He joined the performance advertising industry in 1998 and has built a career in the industry providing strategic business solutions for teams and clients. His track record of helping grow stable, successful organizations is underpinned by a career-long personal commitment to great client experiences. He combines big picture perspective with an exacting attention to make sure that 415's clients and team members get value out of their work every day. Congrats on growing stable, successful organizations, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to talk with you because you are an expert at helping use data-driven decision-making and strategy to build stronger human connections. And it seems like so many companies treat those as two different things. And I'd love to hear how you help people combine the two to great success.
Yeah, so I co-founded a performance marketing agency about 8 years ago, but I've been in digital marketing for 26 years. And really from the beginning, I have been focused very specifically within advertising on performance-based advertising. So what does that mean? That means that every client that I've worked with over my career is very much looking to grow their business by way of driving more revenue, more sales, more leads. So they're not focused on vanity metrics. They're not focused on how many people viewed their ads or how many people clicked on their ads. Instead, it has to be a very specific action that occurs that helps add revenue to the top line. So that's kind of my background. It's been really working exclusively with advertisers who we consider to be what we call direct response advertisers. And so in that business, it's all about building relationships and making those relationships less about assumption and more about evidence. So we are working with clients, and really the only way that we're able to gain the trust is really by way of showing them the data, right? And ultimately, no matter what we say and no matter how much they like us, we have to drive results, and we have to be able to showcase our performance by way of data. And so for us, a lot of what we do is spend time when we're building out campaigns and really engaging with clients is ensuring that there's a certain level of tracking infrastructure in place to support the marketing campaigns that we're investing in across the different digital marketing platforms. And so in business, as we all know, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so for us, it all starts building the right foundation. And you got to get the concrete and the rebar in place based on, I read that about your site and how you kind of use that as an analogy, but it's absolutely true. In our business, really the foundation is tracking. So it all starts there, which is not typically a very sexy topic or interesting topic to many people, but it's necessary in business. And once we are able to sort of implement the appropriate tracking infrastructure that supports the marketing campaigns that we're building and optimizing, that allows us to then become transparent with the client on what the data is, telling, right? And that data is what informs us on our decisions with respect to where to invest the media on which channel based on what the data is telling us.
Yeah, I imagine it also, if you're obviously your marketing needs to move people, it needs to inspire certain actions that you can track. And so if you're not able to get that data, then you don't really know how well your messages are being received or how well people are even like hearing them. And so the data allows you to build the right relationships with the right people at the right point of their like relationship with the brand or the business you're helping promote. And so I think it does seem to be like different than like relationship building when people think about it from the human side of things. When you're trying to scale it and you're trying to reach that many people, having the right data as that foundation, or at least helping you understand how well your efforts in building these relationships are going, then if something isn't working right, you know how to fix it. And if something is working right, then you know how to apply your resources to make the next step to strengthen those relationships. And I think so often companies, if they are just focusing on those vanity metrics, they're thinking, oh, all these people we're doing well because we have all this, the quote unquote data that shows people are engaging, whatever, but it's not, they're either tracking the wrong metrics or they're basically end up spending money building these surface level relationships with people that aren't actually ever going to buy from them. And so they're not building the right relationships with the right people. And so I think that insight of how to use data to build stronger relationships is something that is a kind of way of playing chess when other people are playing checkers when it comes to using data for marketing, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why I talked about tracking, right? So how do we collect, gather, report on the data that's most important to us? And that is why anytime you're working with an agency, if they skip that conversation, I would consider that to be a red flag, right? We got to start with building the right foundation, and the foundation in digital marketing is really, like I said, tracking. And then it's what are the metrics that we're tracking towards, or what are the most important KPIs for the business? Not every business has the same ones. Many do, but there are some businesses that have very specific metrics that they care about. So it's really important to make sure that we're tracking those events, those metrics. It may be more than one, right? And just because if you're in lead gen or you're business to business, and you drive a lead through an advertising campaign, it doesn't mean that lead is actually qualified. Someone may have filled out that form with bogus information, or someone who isn't in your sort of ideal customer profile, right? So like, it's really looking at the data and not just accepting it, but really understanding the data, making sure that we determine if that's really the quality of traffic we want, and then making adjustments based on that. So like you said, it's all a lot about the messaging, it's about the offer, it's about the targeting, and defining exactly who our audience is, who are the people that we're reaching or we're trying to reach. And then based on that, and it's like putting a strategy together to get in front of those people with the right offer, the right messaging, etc.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that just because someone filled out a form or something like that, the being kind of scrutinizing the data you are collecting and not just accepting it at face value is something that's even more and more important with how much companies are relying on like an AI or like LLMs that often are like hallucinating things, or things that are like a lot of misinformation out there. So if you just accept things at face value, that can be dangerous because you're basing your strategy or your decisions off of unreliable data. And so I think that's interesting how that further complicates things. But I imagine with how many years you've been doing this, you have some great kind of success stories of how you've helped companies turn this around. Can you share one of those?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with a lot of different businesses over the years, B2C, B2B companies, trying to solve for different problems for each of those businesses. I would say no matter what the business, each business has absolutely the same goal, which is we need to scale, we need to grow, we need to drive more revenue. And then how we do that may be a little bit different depending on the business. What are some of the problems that we need to solve in order for us to be able to accomplish that goal? Those problems vary from client to client, but oftentimes they're truthfully very similar. And then, when you work with a client, I would say each has its own set of challenges, right? And how we accomplish those goals. So people hire us to not only do the media buying and have the knowledge to leverage the different platforms to help them scale, but also to problem solve. Like, how do we sort of unblock this? How do we, come up with a creative strategy, for the Facebook campaign or TikTok campaign? So there's a lot of different things that we're solving for, but I would say, generally speaking, everybody who comes to us absolutely is measuring the success of their relationship with us or the success of their campaign based on driving more revenue. And so I think, in terms of a case study, there are many that I can draw upon, but I would say one that sticks out is having worked with a premier commercial cleaning business who came to us essentially stating one of their problems was they weren't getting the right deals. They weren't getting the right deals for the salespeople to call on. In fact, many of those deals were either not within the ICP or they were residential opportunities. So this is a commercial cleaning business. They're looking for opportunities to work with, restaurants and schools and hotels and museums and daycare centers, right? And so a lot of the leads that they had been getting previously were, either not an ICP, meaning they weren't sort of targeting the right audience, or they were residential leads, and obviously residential leads they can't monetize. So they didn't have a significant digital footprint relative to their competition prior to working with us, and they needed a partner that could help drive the strategy and grow their online presence. So, the first thing we did, frankly, was what I talked about a few minutes ago, which is they didn't have the appropriate tracking infrastructure that we would typically recommend for a company of that size. They were about $100 million revenue company annually. And surprisingly, a lot of the data, when you looked at it, was not really telling a story. So where we started was really, before spending any money, we wanted to ensure that the site was optimized with updates to focus on, new customer acquisition, but also, implement the correct tracking infrastructure. Also, what we found was a lot of the landing pages, i.e. the pages that we were sending traffic to, weren't really optimized for conversions, nor were they mobile or they weren't responsive. So they weren't really, mobile optimized. A lot of users were actually visiting from a mobile device. And so we looked at those things and immediately went to make improvements to make sure that we could get the landing page to a standard that we would want, and also optimize for mobile users. And then once the site was in a good place to receive paid traffic, we built out the SEM campaigns, incorporated ad copy, message testing, non-brand keyword exploration as well. And then really defined who their ICP was. So who are the folks that you really want to get in front of, right? So how big of a business does this have to be? Who are the titles of these people? And then we started to sort of clean up a lot of the campaign settings, make sure we, which by the way is a very basic thing. This is not a very, what I would consider strategic thing, make sure that we are cutting out any keywords that would bring them in sort of residential opportunities. And that was just kind of a low hanging fruit thing. So when we did sort of a lot of this work, we ended up helping them by way of just bringing in better opportunities, deal sizes that were bigger businesses, more sort of pipeline, just more consistent pipeline, bigger deals where the average deal size was much higher than it was before in ICP. So that definitely was something that we did to help them. And immediately they saw within 4 or 5 months, we're seeing a much different outcome in terms of some of the paid efforts.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing how a company that can reach 100 million ARR can still have issues with the basic like targeting stuff with their messaging and have the landing pages that aren't optimized for conversion. And I think a lot of companies think, oh, we've reached this point where we must be doing things perfectly or well enough that, and there's still these kind of fundamentals to marketing that so many companies have room to improve on, and it's good that you're able to go in there and help them clean that up. And then they saw, like you said, those more commercial clients and fewer residential leads coming in because their messaging is a lot clearer and the keywords and stuff like that. And it actually helps them when they're trying to build those relationships initially with those clients, because they're communicating in a way that builds trust from that initial output and not being kind of wishy-washy or like confusing messaging that even if they do get, before everything, if they did get like a commercial client, they're probably harder to close in general just because the initial impressions made are not nearly as strong as after the ones they're getting after you did made all these changes to their marketing and their landing pages and stuff. So it really shows how important the kind of the marketing fundamentals that you just described end up leading to stronger client relationships with their ICP and being able to build that trust quicker, because that initial communication, that initial impression they're making is so much stronger, and so much of what people remember about a brand or when they're meeting with a salesperson or like a rep from a company is going to be informed by those initial meetings and touch points. So that all is very seems like kind of technical basics of marketing. Getting those basics correct, like I said, lays the foundation for building much stronger relationships going forward, because if you start off awkward, then it makes all the other steps way more difficult going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a lot about focusing on the fundamentals. I think oftentimes people get ahead of themselves and they think too far ahead, right? And you really just have to focus on the basics. It's not rocket science, but it does require sort of focusing on some of these very principal things, right? Which is what we're talking about, right? Just ads, landing pages, tracking, right? Creative testing, right? Just having the discipline and sort of the methodology in place to just, understand that these are the things you constantly have to be testing, messaging and offers and creative and things like that. And that's how people end up making it work, right? Now, it does require a lot of discipline, consistency, like anything else, right? You can't just do it one time and expect success. You always have to be sort of iterating, and always, even when you find an ad that performs very well, you then have to be still creating the next one, right? Like, what's going to outperform that one? So it's kind of like this continuum. You just have to keep going through it, and it doesn't end. And otherwise things become very sort of, out of date, right? And there's a lot of competition out there, and people are testing new things and incorporating new elements, and you just have to be very sort of always aware of that.
Yeah, and I think it's with how fast business moves these days, the minute you start coasting or think you've got it solved, you don't have to like revisit this again, or you have it, it's all kind of set it and forget it sort of thing, you've
Yeah.
already lost. And that it's even, especially with how many messages your clients or your customers get bombarded with from your competition, if you're not staying on top of your game all the time and maintaining those relationships in a proactive way, then you're going to quickly find that someone else has reached out and taken those clients from you. So it's important to have the foundational marketing practices down and having the correct data so that you can build the right relationship with the right people at the right time and bring them into your book of business and keep them there longer. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Borja. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Borja, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.